Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it. Then let's evaluate together. The fog was thick that San Francisco morning, the kind that rolls off the bay and wraps the city in a damp, gray hug. Lily Harper stood halfway down the driveway of James Carter's Pacific Heights mansion, her beat-up suitcase slipping from her fingers. It hit the wet pavement with a dull thud, the sound swallowed by the distant hum of traffic on Lombard Street. Her dark hair clung to her face, soaked from the drizzle, and her thrift store coat was no match for the biting wind. She was leaving. 9 months into this insane deal, and she was done. "Lily, wait!" James's voice cut through the haze, raw and desperate. She froze, turning just enough to see him stumble out of the mansion's double doors. No polished suit today, just a wrinkled white shirt, untucked, and bare feet slapping against the cold stone steps. His usually perfect hair was a mess, like he'd been running his hands through it all night. He looked nothing like the billionaire CEO of Carter Tech she'd met 9 months ago. He looked human. "Don't go," he said, closing the distance between them. His breath came out in short puffs, visible in the chilly dawn air. "Please, I love you, and that was never part of the plan." Lily's heart slammed against her ribs. She wanted to laugh, to scream, to tell him he was full of crap. Love? From the guy who'd paid her $5 million to play his wife for a year? But then he reached into his pocket, pulling out a crumpled stack of papers. The contract. Their contract. 15 pages of cold, legal bullshit that had defined her life since last summer. With trembling hands, he tore it in half, then quarters, letting the pieces flutter to the ground like soggy confetti. "No more rules," he said, his gray eyes locking onto hers. "Just us." The world tilted. Lily's knees felt weak, her mind racing. The wind tugged at the shredded paper, scattering it across the driveway, and for a second she could smell the salt of the bay mixing with the faint cedar scent of James's cologne. She'd signed that damn thing to escape her broke, miserable life, not to fall for the man who'd bought her time. How had it come to this? "Say something," James pleaded, stepping closer. His voice cracked, and she saw the redness around his eyes. Had he been crying? "Tell me you feel it too." Her hand hovered near his, fingertips brushing his knuckles. She could walk away, take a cab back to her old life, minus the money she'd just thrown away. Or she could stay, risking everything on a man who'd turned her world upside down. The choice hung there, heavy as the fog. Let's rewind. 9 months ago, Lily Harper wasn't standing in front of a mansion with a billionaire begging her to stay. She was in a different kind of hell, a 5th-floor walk-up in the Tenderloin, the sketchiest part of San Francisco. The apartment smelled like burnt coffee and regret, the kind of place where the walls were so thin you could hear your neighbor's TV blaring Judge Judy at 3 a.m. An eviction notice was taped to her door, the red ink screaming, "Final warning." Her bank account? Negative $62.14. Her student loans? A cool $50,000, racked up chasing a creative writing degree that hadn't landed her a single gig. She'd been fired from her barista job that week, apparently telling the manager his latte art looked like a toddler's finger painting wasn't a smart move. Before that, she'd been driving Uber at night, dodging drunks and praying her '09 Honda wouldn't die on the Bay Bridge. Dreams? She'd given up on those years ago. Dreams didn't pay the electric bill. That rainy Tuesday started like any other. Lily was trudging through the Mission District, her only decent blazer soaked from a downpour, when a sleek black Tesla splashed muddy water all over her. She cursed loud enough to turn heads, shaking her fist at the tinted windows as the car sped off. Perfect timing. 5 minutes before her interview at Carter Tech, the tech giant down in Silicon Valley. She'd clawed her way into that interview, emailing HR until they caved. It was her last shot at something better than minimum wage. By the time she stormed into the gleaming lobby in Palo Alto, she looked like a drowned rat. Her sneakers squeaked on the marble floor, mascara streaking down her cheeks. The receptionist, a blonde with a headset and a fake smile, glanced up, her eyes widening like Lily had just crawled out of a dumpster. "Miss Harper?" she said, voice dripping with pity. "Mr. Carter's waiting." Lily's stomach dropped. Carter? As in James Carter, the CEO? She thought she was meeting some mid-level suit, not the guy who'd built Carter Tech into a billion-dollar empire. She smoothed her wet hair, squared her shoulders, and followed the receptionist to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows. The view stretched across the valley, tech campuses and rolling hills, but all Lily could see was the man behind the desk. James Carter didn't look up when she walked in. He was all sharp angles, tailored suit, dark hair slicked back, jawline that could cut glass. He flipped through her resume like it was a takeout menu he didn't want to order from. "Your qualifications are lacking," he said finally, his voice crisp as a winter morning. No hello, no handshake, just those gray eyes flicking up to meet hers, cold and unreadable. Lily's face burned. She should have turned and left, but she was soaked, broke, and out of options. "Maybe," she shot back, crossing her arms. "But your company's marketing sucks. It's all buzzwords and boring ads. I could do better with a Sharpie and a napkin." A muscle twitched in his jaw. Was that annoyance? Amusement? He leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. "Bold, but I'm not hiring a marketer." "Then why am I here?" she snapped. He didn't blink. "I need a wife." Lily laughed, a short, sharp bark that echoed in the room. "What?" "Temporary," he said, sliding a folder across the desk. "1 year. My board's on my ass to settle down, show stability. Carter Tech's image depends on it. $5 million. You play the part, we keep it public. Private lives stay separate. No strings." She stared at him, waiting for the punchline. None came. He tapped the folder. "Sign here." "Are you kidding me?" Lily said, stepping back. "I'm not some eBay listing you can bid on." $5 million, he repeated, like it was a magic word. "Your debt's gone. No more eviction notices. You'd never have to sling coffee or drive drunks around again. It's a job, Miss Harper. Take it or leave it." Her mouth went dry. $5 million. She could see it, paying off her loans, getting a real place, maybe even writing again. All for pretending to love a guy who looked like he'd never smiled in his life. She thought of her apartment, the eviction notice, the way her car rattled like it was on its last leg. What did she have to lose? "Separate bedrooms?" she asked, voice quieter now. "Separate everything," he said. "It's business." She picked up the pen, her hand shaking. The contract was thick, 15 pages of clauses and penalties typed in tiny font. Confidentiality. No physical intimacy. Public affection for show only. She skimmed it, her pulse pounding in her ears. This was crazy, but crazy might just save her. "Fine," she muttered, scribbling her name next to his. Lily Harper in messy cursive, right under James Carter in bold, precise strokes. 1 year. That's it. He nodded, taking the contract back. "Welcome to the family, Mrs. Carter." She snorted. "Don't push it." As she left the office, the weight of what she'd done hit her. $5 million for 12 months of lying. She could do this. No feelings, no mess, just a paycheck, right? Back in her apartment that night, she packed her life into 2 duffels, an old laptop, some clothes, a dog-eared copy of The Great Gatsby. The rain tapped against the window, a steady drumbeat to her racing thoughts. Tomorrow, she'd move into James Carter's world, a world of glass and steel and money she couldn't even imagine. She zipped the bag shut, whispering to herself, "It's just a job, nothing more." But deep down, in the pit of her stomach, something stirred. A tiny, stupid spark of curiosity about the man who'd just bought a year of her life. She shoved it down, locked it away. This was business, nothing else. Or so she thought. Hey, if you've ever wondered what it'd be like to sign a contract that flips your whole life upside down, stick around. Hit that subscribe button to follow Lily and James on this wild ride. Trust me, it's just getting started. And drop a comment. What's the craziest thing you've ever done for cash? I'm dying to hear your stories. Lily Harper's first day as Mrs. James Carter didn't feel real. She stood in the driveway of his Pacific Heights mansion, clutching her duffels, as a driver in a crisp black suit loaded them into a Bentley. The place was insane. 3 stories of glass and steel perched on a hill, with a view of the Golden Gate Bridge peeking through the morning fog. It smelled like money, polished wood, fresh-cut flowers, and that faint, salty tang from the bay. Her old life in the Tenderloin, where the air reeked of weed and burnt toast, felt 1,000,000 miles away. The driver, a guy with a buzz cut and zero expression, didn't say a word as he dropped her off at the front steps. Inside, a housekeeper greeted her. Mrs. Helen, a wiry woman with gray hair pulled into a tight bun. "Mr. Carter prefers his privacy," she said. Her voice clipped, barely meeting Lily's eyes as she led her through the house. The floors gleamed like ice, the furniture all sharp edges and neutral tones. It was less a home and more a showroom, the kind you'd see in Architectural Digest. Lily's wing wasn't just a room. It was a whole damn suite. A king-size bed with sheets that probably cost more than her rent. A bathroom with a tub big enough to drown in, and a walk-in closet already stocked with clothes she'd never have picked herself. She ran her fingers over a silk blouse, the tag still dangling. $800. Jesus. She dropped her duffels on the floor, the thud echoing in the cavernous space. This was hers for a year. All she had to do was play the part. That night, she found a binder on her bed, black leather, embossed with Carter's schedule in gold foil. She flipped it open, and her stomach sank. Charity galas, business dinners, board meetings, all mapped out like a military campaign. There were even appointments. A wardrobe fitting in Union Square, etiquette lessons with some snooty coach named Margaret, media training with a PR guy who'd probably bleach her personality into something camera-ready. James had thought of everything except how she'd survive this without losing her mind. "Act the part," he'd said in that office, his voice flat as a boardroom table. Fine. She'd act. She'd smile and nod and pretend she belonged in his world. $5 million was worth a little play pretend, right? 3 days later, she was standing in front of a full-length mirror, stuffed into a navy gown that hugged her like a second skin. The designer heels pinched her toes, and the diamond necklace, on loan from some jeweler in the financial district, felt like a noose. She barely recognized herself. Hair swept up, makeup airbrushed to perfection. She looked like one of those Instagram influencers she scrolled past on her cracked iPhone. The hospital fundraiser at the Fairmont Hotel was her first test. James picked her up in the Bentley, looking like he'd stepped out of a GQ shoot. Black tux, crisp white shirt, cufflinks glinting under the streetlights. He didn't say much on the drive, just stared out the window at Nob Hill's mansions rolling by. The silence was thick, broken only by the hum of the engine and the faint jazz spilling from the radio. "Rules," he said finally, turning to her as they pulled up to the hotel. "Smile. Stay close. Don't improvise." "Got it, boss," she muttered, tugging at the hem of her dress. He shot her a look. half annoyed, half something else she couldn't read. The Fairmont's ballroom was a sea of tuxedos and sequins, chandeliers dripping light onto marble floors. Cameras flashed as they stepped inside, a buzz rippling through the crowd. James Carter and his mystery wife. Lily plastered on a smile, her cheeks already aching. James's hand landed on her lower back, guiding her through the throng. His touch was firm, impersonal, like he was steering a shopping cart. But damn if it didn't send a jolt up her spine anyway. "Mr. Carter!" A society reporter from SF Chronicle swooped in, all teeth and hairspray. "Everyone's dying to know. How'd you two meet?" James didn't miss a beat. "A gallery downtown. She caught my eye and I knew she was special." His practiced smile didn't reach his eyes, but his voice was smooth as whiskey. Lily bit back a laugh. Special? She'd been a soggy mess yelling at his marketing team, but she played along, leaning into him just enough to sell it. "He's a charmer," she said, grinning. "Swept me right off my feet." The reporter ate it up, scribbling notes. James's hand tightened on her back, a warning or a reflex, she couldn't tell. Then someone cracked a joke about hospital food, and Lily couldn't help it. She laughed for real. A loud, unladylike snort that cut through the polite chatter. Heads turned. James glanced at her, his cool mask slipping for a split second. His lips twitched like he might actually smile, but he caught himself. "You're off script," he murmured as the reporter drifted away. "Oops," she said, smirking. "Guess I forgot my lines." He didn't reply, just steered her toward a cluster of suits, bigwigs from Carter Tech's board, all gray hair and Rolexes. They sized her up like she was a stock they might short. "Lovely to meet you, Mrs. Carter," one said, his handshake limp. "James has been keeping you under wraps." "Had to make sure she was ready for the spotlight," James said, smooth as ever. His hand stayed on her back, a steady pressure she couldn't ignore. The night dragged on. Speeches, small talk, champagne she didn't dare sip too much of. Every time she thought she'd get a break, James pulled her into another photo op or conversation. By the time they climbed back into the Bentley, her feet screamed, and her face felt like it might crack from smiling. "Good job," he said, loosening his tie as the car purred toward Pacific Heights. "You're a natural." "Yeah. Well, I deserve an Oscar," she said, kicking off her heels. The cool leather seat felt like heaven against her aching soles. "How do you do this all the time?" He shrugged, staring out at the city lights. "You get used to it." She didn't buy that. She'd seen the way he downed black coffee like it was oxygen, the way his shoulders tensed when the board members grilled him about quarterly projections. James Carter didn't get used to it. He survived it. Back at the mansion, Lily limped to her wing, the gown pooling around her feet as she yanked it off. She collapsed onto the bed, staring at the ceiling. The diamond ring on her finger glinted in the dim light, heavy, cold, fake as hell. She twisted it off, tossing it onto the nightstand. This wasn't her life. It was a gig, a paycheck, a way out. She'd get through it, cash the check, and bounce. But as she drifted off, she couldn't shake the memory of James's hand on her back. Steady, warm, electric. Or the way he'd looked at her when she laughed, like she'd thrown him off his game. It was nothing, she told herself. Just her imagination, running wild. Across the house in his own wing, James sat at his desk, the gala's noise still buzzing in his head. He poured a scotch, neat, and flipped open his laptop. Work never stopped. Not for him. But his mind kept drifting to Lily, her laugh, her smart-ass comeback, the way she'd held her own in a room full of sharks. She wasn't supposed to be that good at this. She was just a means to an end, a fix for the board's nagging. He drained the glass, the burn grounding him. "It's business," he muttered, shutting the laptop. Nothing more. The next morning, Lily found a note slipped under her door. James's handwriting, sharp and precise. "Breakfast, 8 a.m., dining room." She groaned, rubbing sleep from her eyes. Day 4, and the show was already rolling again. She didn't know it yet, but this was just the beginning. The real test was coming, and it'd be a hell of a lot tougher than a gala. Lily Harper had been Mrs. James Carter for a month, and she was starting to get the hang of it. Or so she told herself. Still, there were moments that threw her. Like the way James always thanked the staff by name. Mrs. Helen, the driver Tony, even the gardener who barely spoke English. Or how he'd fiddle with that beat-up leather watch on his wrist during meetings, a cheap thing that clashed with his $1,000 suits. She'd asked about it once, over breakfast in the dining room, a cavernous space with a view of the bay and a table that could seat 20. "It was my dad's," he'd said, voice flat, cutting the conversation dead. He'd switched to asking about her coffee order like nothing happened. Lily didn't push. She wasn't here to play therapist. But late one Sunday, when the fog hung low over San Francisco and sleep wouldn't come, she stumbled on something that cracked his armor wide open. She'd wandered downstairs in her ratty UC Berkeley sweatshirt, craving tea to settle her nerves. The kitchen was all stainless steel and granite, spotless like no one ever used it. As she fumbled with the kettle, a sound drifted through the quiet, soft, haunting piano notes echoing from somewhere deep in the house. Curiosity tugged at her. She padded barefoot down a hallway she'd never explored, the music growing louder until she reached a small room tucked behind the library. The door was ajar. And there he was, James, hunched over an old upright piano, fingers moving over the keys, with a gentleness she didn't know he had. His eyes were closed, brows furrowed, lost in a melody that sounded like heartbreak. No suit, no tie, just a plain gray tee and jeans, his hair falling into his face. Lily held her breath, leaning against the doorframe. This wasn't the James Carter who barked orders at board meetings or schmoozed donors with a fake smile. This was someone else, someone raw, unguarded. The music stopped abruptly, his hands freezing on the keys. She slipped away before he could spot her, heart pounding as she retreated to her wing. She didn't sleep that night. The image of him burned into her brain. Who was this guy? She told herself it didn't matter. He was her boss, her ticket out of debt, not her problem. But the next morning, when he slid into the dining room for breakfast, she couldn't unsee it. The shadows under his eyes, the way he gripped his coffee mug like it was a lifeline. She wanted to ask about the piano, about his dad, about whatever ghosts he was chasing. Instead, she bit her tongue and stabbed at her eggs. Everything changed. 2 days later. It was a Wednesday night, and Lily was sprawled on her bed, scrolling X on her phone, when James's voice crackled through the intercom, sharp, urgent. "Lily, get dressed. We need to go. Now." She bolted upright, fumbling into jeans and a hoodie. He was waiting in the foyer, pacing, phone pressed to his ear. His face was pale, jaw tight. "Clara's husband. He's been in an accident. Oakland General. We're leaving." Clara, his older sister. Lily had met her once at a family brunch in Marin. She'd been all sharp edges and sharper questions. "What's in this for you, Lily? Money? Status?" Now James looked like he might crack in half. The drive to Oakland was a blur. 40 minutes of headlights slicing through the dark. The Bay Bridge a streak of steel and lights. James didn't talk, just stared out the window, one hand clenched on his knee. Lily didn't know what to say, so she didn't say anything. When they hit the hospital, the smell hit her first. Antiseptic and stale coffee, the kind of place that made your skin crawl. Clara was in the waiting room, a mess of mascara and sobs, her usual polish gone. He was driving home from work. Some idiot ran a red light, she choked out, collapsing into James's arms. Lily hung back, feeling like an intruder. But James turned to her, eyes wild. "Stay," he said. Not an order, a plea. She nodded, sinking into a plastic chair. "He's stable," the doc said, and Clara burst into tears again. James let out a breath like he'd been holding it for hours, his grip on Lily's hand tightening for a second before he let go. The ride back was quiet, the city asleep around them. James stared at the dashboard, voice rough when he finally spoke. "Thanks. For staying." "Yeah, well," Lily said, shrugging. "I make a mean hospital coffee run." He huffed, a small tired sound that might have been a laugh. "You didn't have to." "I know," she said softly, "but I wanted to." He glanced at her then, just for a second, and something flickered in his eyes. Gratitude, maybe, or something deeper. She couldn't tell, and she didn't ask. When they got back to the mansion, he disappeared into his wing without another word, the door clicking shut behind him. Lily stood in the foyer, her sneakers still damp from the hospital floor. Her chest felt tight, her head spinning. She wasn't supposed to care. The contract was clear, no emotional entanglements. She was here for the money, not to hold his hand through a crisis. But sitting there in that waiting room, watching him unravel, she'd felt needed, and that scared the hell out of her. Upstairs, she kicked off her shoes and flopped onto the bed, staring at the ceiling. The diamond ring sat on the nightstand, mocking her. She'd signed up for a performance, not this messy human thing creeping in despite her best efforts. She squeezed her eyes shut, willing it away. "It's just a job," she whispered. "Get it together." Across the house, James sat in his office, the scotch bottle open on his desk. He hadn't touched it, just stared at the amber liquid, replaying the night. Clara's sobs, the doctor's words, Lily's hand in his. He'd built his life on control. Every deal, every move calculated. But tonight, he'd needed her, and she'd stayed. Not because of the contract, because she wanted to. He ran a hand through his hair, muttering, "This is business, nothing more." But the words felt hollow, and he knew it. He slammed the laptop shut, the sound sharp in the silence. Lily Harper was supposed to be a prop, a solution, not someone who could slip under his skin like this. The next morning, Mrs. Helen knocked on Lily's door with a new schedule. Another gala, this time in Palo Alto. Life rolled on, the show never stopping. But as Lily dragged herself out of bed, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. The lines she'd drawn, fake versus real, were starting to blur, and she wasn't sure she could redraw them. James, meanwhile, stood at his window, watching the fog lift over the bay. He adjusted his watch, the leather worn smooth from years of wear. Keep it together, he told himself. But deep down he knew the cracks were there, and they were only getting wider. Lily Harper was 6 months into her gig as Mrs. James Carter, and she'd gotten damn good at it. The Carter schedule was her Bible now. Galas, board meetings, photo ops, all second nature. She could smile on cue, toss out their fake gallery meet-cute story like a pro, and even handle the board's passive-aggressive digs about her sudden marriage. She'd traded her Tenderloin chaos for Pacific Heights polish, and the $5 million paycheck waiting at the end kept her focused. Feelings? Locked away. Or so she thought. But James was messing with her head. Ever since that night at Oakland General, something had shifted. He'd started joining her for breakfast some mornings. Nothing fancy, just coffee and toast in the dining room, the bay sparkling outside. He'd ask real questions. What was your major? Ever miss writing? She'd deflect with sarcasm. Yeah, I'm penning the next great American novel between charity auctions. But he'd listen, those gray eyes steady, like he actually cared. It was dangerous, this slow thaw in his Ice King vibe. Then there was the chess. One rainy afternoon, bored out of her skull, Lily had found a board in the library and challenged him. He'd smirked. You sure about this? And proceeded to lose spectacularly. She'd whooped, tossing a pawn at him, and he'd laughed, a real unguarded laugh that lit up his face. You're full of surprises, he'd said, studying her like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. She'd grinned back, ignoring the warmth spreading through her chest. Bad idea, Harper. Very bad idea. The annual Carter Tech Gala in San Jose was the big one. Black tie, big donors, the whole Silicon Valley circus. Lily stood in her suite, wrestling with a crimson gown that cost more than her old Honda. The mirror showed a stranger, sleek updo, smoky eyes, diamonds dripping from her ears. She looked the part. She just wasn't sure she felt it anymore. James knocked, leaning against the doorframe in his tux. Ready? As I'll ever be, she said, smoothing the dress. He nodded, but his eyes lingered a beat too long. She brushed it off. Showtime nerves, that's all. The San Jose Convention Center was packed. Tech bros in bespoke suits, venture capitalists sipping $20 cocktails, jazz drifting from a live band. Chandeliers glittered overhead, and the air smelled like money and ambition. James's hand found her lower back as they stepped in, a familiar move by now, but it still made her skin tingle. Cameras flashed, voices buzzed. The Carters have arrived, of key. They were halfway through the crowd when a woman cut through like a shark, tall, stunning, red silk dress clinging to every curve. Her dark hair fell in waves, and her smile was all teeth. She made a beeline for James, air-kissing his cheeks with a purr. James, darling. It's been too long. Lily's stomach twisted. James stiffened, his hand dropping from her back. Rachel, he said, voice tight. Didn't know you'd be here. Wouldn't miss it, the woman, Rachel, replied, turning her laser-focus eyes on Lily. And this must be the mysterious wife who stole you away. Her tone was honeyed, but the edge was sharp enough to cut glass. Lily, she said, forcing a smile. Nice to meet you. Rachel Evans, she said, offering a limp handshake. Old friend of James's. Very old friend. The air crackled. Lily glanced at James, but his face was a mask, cool, controlled, unreadable. Rachel looped her arm through his, chatting about some startup she was pitching, like Lily wasn't even there. The crowd swallowed them, and Lily stood frozen, the noise fading to a dull roar. Who the hell was this woman? She got her answer later, slipping away to the bar for a breather. Through a cracked door to a side office, she heard voices, James and Rachel, low and heated. This charade's beneath you, Rachel hissed. The board would have bought us as a power couple. We had a deal. Family tradition, the merger, your dad's wishes. That was then, James shot back, his voice like steel. My marriage isn't your business. Isn't it? Rachel laughed, bitter. She's a prop, James. I was there when you had nothing, when Carter Tech was just a pipe dream in your garage. What's she got besides a pretty face and your checkbook? Lily's breath caught. She pressed against the wall, heart hammering. James didn't answer right away, and when he did, his voice was quieter, strained. You don't get it, Rachel. I need her. For what? Rachel snapped. A photo op? The door swung shut, muffling the rest. Lily stumbled back, her drink sloshing in her hand. I need her. What did that mean? She downed the vodka soda, the burn grounding her. Rachel was an ex. Had to be. But family tradition? Merger? This wasn't just jealousy. There was history here, and Lily was caught in the middle. Back in the ballroom, James found her, his jaw tight. "You okay?" "Peachy," she lied, forcing a grin. "Your friend's charming." He didn't take the bait, just steered her toward a group of donors. But the night took another turn when a sleazy VC, some guy named Brad with a Rolex and a smirk, sidled up during a toast. "Carter, your wife's a catch," he said, loud enough for heads to turn. "How much did that ring set you back? Or was it a package deal?" The room went quiet. Lily's face burned, her hands curling into fists. Before she could snap back, James stepped forward, voice low and lethal. "Talk about her like that again, and you'll regret it. Clear?" Brad blinked, laugh dying in his throat. "Just a joke, man." "Not to me," James said, eyes blazing. He didn't move, didn't raise his voice, but the threat hung there, heavy as a storm cloud. Brad muttered something and slunk off, the crowd buzzing again. Lily stared at James, pulse racing. "You didn't have to do that." "Yeah, I did," he said, turning to her. His face softened, just for a second. "You're my wife." "Fake wife," she corrected, but her voice wobbled. He didn't reply, just handed her a fresh drink and moved on like nothing happened. But it had happened, and it stuck with her. The way he jumped in, no hesitation. It wasn't in the script. The ride home was silent, the Bentley's headlights cutting through the dark. Lily kicked off her heels, staring at the ring on her finger. James's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, his watch catching the dashboard glow. She wanted to ask about Rachel, about the fight, about why he'd defended her like that. But the words wouldn't come. Back at the mansion, she cornered him in the foyer, the marble cold under her bare feet. "Rachel, who is she to you?" He froze, coat halfway off. "Old friend," he said, too quick. "Bullshit," Lily said, crossing her arms. "I heard you two. Merger? Family stuff? What's going on, James?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair, a rare crack in his polish. "She was my fiancée, years ago. It was a business thing. Our families wanted to merge companies. When my dad died, I called it off. The board wasn't happy." Lily's mouth went dry. "So I'm... what? Plan B?" "No," he said, stepping closer. His eyes locked onto hers, intense, unguarded. "You're not her, Lily. You're not like anyone." Her breath hitched. He was close enough that she could smell his cologne, cedar and something sharp. For a dumb, reckless second, she thought he might kiss her. Then he pulled back, walls slamming up again. "Get some sleep," he muttered, heading for his wing. She watched him go, heart pounding. "You're not like anyone." What the hell did that mean? She climbed the stairs to her suite, the gown dragging behind her. Rachel's words echoed, a prop, a checkbook, but so did James's. "I need her." She flopped onto the bed, staring at the ceiling. 6 months in, and the lines were blurring fast, too fast. Across the house, James stood at his window, the city lights a smear through the glass. He poured a scotch, downed it in one go. Rachel showing up was a gut punch. Old promises, old guilt. But seeing Lily hold her own tonight, then hearing that asshole Brad run his mouth, something had snapped. She wasn't just a contract anymore. She was real, and that scared the shit out of him. He adjusted his watch, the leather warm against his skin. "Keep it together," he muttered. But he wasn't sure he could. 9 months into her role as Mrs. James Carter, Lily Harper was unraveling. The Pacific Heights mansion had lost its alien sheen. The creak of the hardwood floors, the hum of the espresso machine, the way the fog softened the bay's edges felt like home now. She and James had a rhythm. Quiet breakfasts where he'd poke fun at her burnt toast. Late nights in his study where she'd curl up with a paperback while he typed. His hand brushing hers over a stack of papers didn't jolt her anymore. It was just there, warm, steady, too damn comfortable. That was the problem. She'd stopped marking days on her mental calendar. The $5 million was still the prize. Freedom from debt, a clean slate. But it wasn't the only tether anymore. That night, by the koi pond, she pulled Lily aside. "He looks at you the way his father looked at me," she said, voice low. "Whatever started this, it's real now." Lily's throat closed up. She forced a laugh. "Just playing my part, Mrs. Carter." Grace patted her hand, smiling. "Sure, honey. Keep telling yourself that." Later, James found her by the pond, the party's hum fading into the breeze. "You were great tonight," he said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. His fingers lingered on her cheek, warm against the cool air. Her breath hitched, the space between them shrinking. For one reckless second, she thought he'd kiss her. Then he stepped back, clearing his throat. "Gotta check on the guests." He left her there, heart hammering. Grace's words echoed. It's real now, and she couldn't shake them. She was breaking the contract's biggest rule. No feelings. It was eating her alive. The hammer dropped a week later, fast and brutal. She scrolled X. The rumors wildfire. Gold digger wife out. X back in. Her hand shook as she stared at the blurry shot. It could have been business. Rachel's family tied to Carter Tech's past. But doubt gnawed at her. Was this why he'd pulled away by the pond? Was she just a stand-in until Rachel reclaimed her spot? She waited in the living room, lights off. The newspaper splayed on the coffee table like evidence. James rolled in late, the Bentley's rumble fading outside. He stepped through the door, tie loose, face haggard, dark circles under his eyes, hair a wreck. "Explain," she said, shoving the paper at him. Her voice held steady, but her chest felt like it'd cave. He glanced at it, a flicker crossing his face. Guilt, maybe. "It's not what you think," he said, tossing his keys onto the counter. "Then what?" she snapped, standing. "Because it looks like I'm out here playing house while you're plotting with your ex." He paced, rubbing his face. "It's complicated, Lily." "I've been your fake wife for 9 months," she said, voice rising. "I deserve something straight for once." He stopped, meeting her eyes. "Rachel's family owns the last piece of my dad's legacy, a company he lost before he died. I've been chasing it for years. The board won't back me unless I look stable. That's why I needed you." Her breath caught. "So I'm just a prop? A box to check for your dad's dream?" "It started like that," he said, voice rough. She froze, tears spilling over. "Then why's it still feel like a lie?" He didn't answer, just stood there, shoulders slumped. She bolted upstairs, door slamming behind her, the echo ringing through the house. She packed through a haze, jeans, hoodies, her beat-up laptop, shoving it all into her duffels. 9 months of faking it, and it ended with a grainy photo and a fight she couldn't unhear. She was done. Tina showed up an hour later, banging on her suite's door. Not the broke-ass barista, not the Uber driver, you, the real you. And yeah, he's a dumbass with baggage, but he's been showing it, hasn't he? Lily paused, hands trembling. The chess games, the hospital, the way he'd shut down Brad. Tina wasn't wrong, but that photo, those whispers, they cut too deep. "I can't trust him," she said, voice cracking. "Not after this." Tina sighed. "Then go. But you're not just running from him. You're running from you." Lily didn't reply, just hauled her bags to the door. She scribbled a note on a post-it. "I'm out. Keep your money," and left it on the nightstand. No grand goodbye, no drama. She slipped out as the fog thickened, calling a cab from the driveway. The driver, a chatty guy in a giant's cap like Tina's, glanced at her bags. "Rough night?" "Rough year," she muttered, watching the mansion shrink in the rear view. The city woke around her, horns blaring, lights flickering through the haze.